Well, it probably sounds like I'm bragging, but I am here in Sardinia to drive the new Ferrari Roma Spider. It's the open-topped version of Ferrari's GT car. And I'm parked here outside some beautiful roads, hoping for a clear spot of traffic without those buses, so I can show you what this car is like to drive and answer some questions like, why would I want a GT Ferrari and not one of the sporty go-fast track versions? And how have they turned the coupe into a convertible? So first of all, the Roma is Ferrari's GT model. It has a focus on elegance, comfort, and even passenger enjoyment. Ferrari markets this car as a 2+, not a 2+2, a 2+. That's because even though I'm not that tall, the person behind me would have to have no legs or be a child. So that means that the rear seats are kind of just for your backpack or children. That's okay. It's nice just to have them. Now we are in the Roma Spider. The Spider conversion was a little tricky on this car because they had to convert that graceful Roma coupe into this. Structurally, what they did is they added big, strong door sills here, and they reinforced basically the plate under the rear seat. Those are the main structural changes. Also, it is the first cloth top Ferrari since the F430. All the previous ones have been folding hard tops, so it's interesting to try it out with the roof up, but don't you worry, we will have it down. The conversion did add 84 kilograms of weight to the Roma, but this one is still quite light. Putting the top down is super easy. Just got to hold the switch, and it all happens automatically. It does take a bit, but you can do it at speeds up to 60 kilometers per hour. And that top itself has 7 layers of insulation. So when you're driving around with the top up, it's actually quite comfortable, quite quiet, and very nice to drive. While we wait for traffic to clear, let's talk about the inside of this car. Unlike most Ferraris, which are driver-focused 100%, this one's actually almost a symmetrical dual cockpit. There's a touchscreen in the middle that both of the users can use, and there's even a screen for the passenger, which shows things like throttle position, revs, and even basic navigation infotainment stuff. Now we can pull a paddle and have a go. I'm going to select manual. Listen to that. Now the Roma uses the Ferrari F154 engine, variants of which are found all over the Ferrari lineup, including the GTC 4 Lusso and the 488, etc., etc. In this form, it's a wet sump, not a dry sump like the hardcore ones, and it makes around 600 horsepower and 560 pound-feet of torque. Now, it is twin turbocharged, which means that peak power starts around 5,800 RPM and hangs around all the way to 7,500 RPM, which is amazing for a turbo engine. And as you can also hear, this car has no mufflers. The latest emission rules say you have to have a gasoline particulate filter on the back. And what that means is that that filter and the turbos act as mufflers, and thus there is no actual muffler on the car. So that sound is au naturel, baby. That engine is 3.855 liters, 3.9 for short, and it is just the best. And that was actually the first time I've actually had to go hand over hand in a while. I would say the defining characteristic of this car is the steering. It's still an electric rack, so the feeling isn't quite, you know, as the best of the best, but for an electric rack, it is incredible and so precise. It takes a little bit of getting used to, actually, because the steering is so sensitive to your movements, not in an annoying way, but you're just not used to driving a car with this much precision. You can just drive it with your fingertips around corners. It's so wonderful. And we also need to talk about this thing. Check this out. So I'm gonna press this button, and that pops up. Now that is the rear wind deflector, and it's actually patent pending. It has a little hole in the middle, and the angle has been precisely tested to reduce wind buffeting in the cabin at speed. And I have to say, it looks a little funky, but it does work. Now for the added layer, we could also roll up our windows for a real cocoon. But you want to hear this car, don't you? And that's because this car has a flat plane crank Ferrari V8, and driving it is almost as good as listening to it. Now, the other thing that surprised me about this car, being that it is the GT in the lineup, is how comfortable it is. I've been driving around mostly in the sport setting, and usually on sports car drives, I end up in sport for like 15 minutes and then I regress back to comfort mode because it's so hardcore. But in this car, sport is surprisingly soft, actually. It has even a bumpy road mode. You can press it any of the modes, which defaults the suspension to its softest setting, so you can still enjoy the sports exhaust, which is valved, or you can drive around comfortably. But even in the sport setting, I was surprised by how soft the car was, and there's even a little bit of perceptible body roll, which you don't expect in a Ferrari. Of course, it drives beautifully, but I was not expecting it to be this comfortable, drivable. It's wonderful. And with 600 horsepower, it is so fast. This car also thankfully has carbon ceramic brakes, which do a great job to haul this thing down from speed, because with all that power and all that turbo torque, you get to the next corner a lot faster than you'd think. Now we have the top down, but when it's up, it's made of this really cool iridescent fabric that looks like a really expensive suit. And like I said earlier, it has 7 layers in it to keep you free of temperature and sound from the outside. But really, like I said, just the calling card of this car is the steering. It's so perfect. I take back what I said earlier. It might be one of the best electric racks I've ever driven. Now, another thing is that there's a 3-position active rear spoiler out back. It has obviously a retracted position, in which case it's maximum aerodynamic efficiency, and it can also be popped up in 2 positions. The first position gives you 30% available downforce, and it comes up automatically at speeds over about 100 kilometers an hour. It then retracts if you go slower than 60 kilometers an hour, and it's just to get the rear end a little more planted. Then, if you're driving harder and you're going faster, it notices the G loads, and then it will automatically pop up that rear spoiler to its full position, where it generates 95 kilograms of downforce in its highest position, which is achieved at 250 kilometers per hour. And while it's doing this, it only increases the drag load by 4%. Now, this dual clutch transmission is a joy to use. And the cool part is that, unlike the Portofino, which this car replaces, it's an 8-speed instead of a 7-speed. Now, what Ferrari has done is made gears 1 through 6 really low, so it feels sporty, and you have really keep this engine in the power band. 7th gear is for cruising, they say, and 8th gear is an economy gear. 8th gear is for motorway, it's for fuel economy. It really does relax the car. But gears 1 through 6 are nice and close, nice and low, and keep this car super fun to drive. The result of all of this is that you get a perfect Gran Turismo convertible. It has more than enough power. In fact, it'll do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.4 seconds, which is only a tick behind the V10 R8 we drove last week. And it's consummately comfortable. There's no reason you couldn't click this car on the Manettino switch into comfort mode and drive in absolute comfort, top, up, or down, to whichever luxurious destination you had in mind. And then at the flick of the switch, this car becomes an animal. That engine is insane. I mean, come on. This car really does do it all, and it's an incredible replacement of the Portofino. I also think that Ferrari stylists did a good job of turning the graceful Roma coupe into a Spider. I think if I had the choice, I'd still prefer the coupe, but as a convertible, this car is pretty much perfect. There are lots of Ferraris to the racetrack, but this one is built for right here. Beautiful roads on a sunny day. It doesn't get much better than this, folks. So there you have it. The Ferrari Roma is the elegant Ferrari, and it's the one I would pick for a summer Italian road trip. This car is pretty much perfect, except it doesn't fit a lot of things in the back, and as you can imagine, it's quite expensive. How much does it cost? Well, they haven't told us exact pricing, but a smart guess would pinpoint it between $250,000 and $300,000, although most of these are going to go out the door with an average of $70,000 in options. So the MSRP doesn't really matter because these cars get so loaded up when they get sold anyways. Now, order books are open for this car. If you watch this video and you want one, you can walk down to your local Ferrari dealer. They will take your order, and the car will arrive just around the end of Q4 in Canada. Now, on Driving.ca, I also have a full written review of this car if this video just wasn't enough Ferrari Roma for you. Now, don't forget to check us out on our website at Driving.ca. I'm Clayton Seams, and I'm going to hit these paddles and go back to driving on this beautiful road.